All right, folks. Here it is, man. Here it is. This is what we've been waiting for, Yama. We've been waiting for this for years and years and years. And finally, today is the day. And first of all, there's a comment in the section here. I don't know if Greg can put this up here. Greg, can you put up the Greg Paulus comment before I get going here? Okay. Greg Paulus says, first started listening to ISD back, the Power Hour back in 2015 while I was in college. Told myself after I graduated and paid off my student loans, I would pay and become an ISD member. Goal met. That day is today. First of all, I want to say congratulations, Jacob. Thank you for joining us at Irish Sports Daily. And I've mentioned this before, and this reminded me of this. And I just want to say this before we get the show. If there are Notre Dame students who are listening to this show or watch it on YouTube, I was once a broke college student. I know Yama was too. I know Greg was. It sucks, man. And I had to pay for Blue and Gold Illustrated, and I had to have it delivered to me, and it was about $100 because by the time if you didn't get the expedited delivery, that was a lot of money for me back then. So I just want to say this. If you are a member, or if you're not a member and you are a student and you can provide an nd.edu email address, I will give you a free subscription until you graduate. I have no problem doing that because I was once a broke college student. So you can email me at mikefrank18@gmail.com. And I'm sorry, Jacob, I should have said this while you were there, and I apologize. So I feel bad about that. But if anybody wants a free subscription that is a student at Notre Dame, can send me an email via nd.edu email address. I will give you a free subscription until you graduate from college, because I know what it's like to do that. So let's just start off with that. The other thing I want to start off with is we are running a special on Irish Sports Daily. This is the very last day of it, and I haven't mentioned it because I don't like to give away stuff for free, that type of stuff. And we're not doing anything for free, but we are running a special for the game. It's a year of Irish Sports Daily for $59.99. That's $50 off what the normal yearly subscription is. But you got to sign up today. Today is the last day. Go to the front page of Irish Sports Daily. Click on the promo that's on the front page there. Sign up. It's today or nothing. And we don't run these hardly ever. The only time I'm doing it is, I think the last time we did it was when Marcus Freeman was hired. The time we did it before that was last time Notre Dame played in the BCS. So we don't do this, or not BCS, but playoff. So we don't do this very often. And so I just wanted to tell people, hey, if you want to take advantage of it, right now is a great time to do it. Yama, let's get into it, brother. Right before we went on the show and I was getting ready to get on here, Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses came on. I was jamming, trying to get in a good mood. And I said, now, what a fitting song. What a fitting song to start. Just the eerie stuff coming up and it gets big and loud. And I'm like, damn, this is going to be a great day. And I don't know whether it's going to be a great day. I just know this much. Nobody's going to ruin my day, Yama. I don't care what happens. Notre Dame has already won. I don't care what happens. Nobody's going to ruin my day. Whatever happens, happens. The fact that they got here is great. I hope that they win it all. I'm cheering as loud as I've ever have, but I'm just telling you, this is a great day because of what it's taken to get to this point. And no matter what happens tonight, no matter what the outcome is, it doesn't matter, because you have to look at Notre Dame has the right guy. They have the right coach. They got the right coaching staff. People are starting to take notice. This is a win no matter what happens, Jamie. Your thoughts before we get rolling?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way that I think anyone should take it, win or lose tonight. Notre Dame will be back. Like, this is not the end of this run. This is the beginning. And I think that's what stood out more than anything during this time. Obviously, when you win these games that like Notre Dame hadn't won for 30 years, it's like, well, they won this major bowl game and this game and all this. Like, you win those games, obviously, those are big deals. But I think you can just see by where the program is and where they're at right now and how they compete and what kind of the image that Marcus Freeman has built the program around, and what they are and who they are, that is a winning formula. That is a winning formula, specifically at Notre Dame. Like, no one has embraced like the physical side of being, and like people kind of scoffed at the an O line and D line driven. I mean, there definitely were some people who thought that because Notre Dame wasn't there yet, but they are absolutely getting there, and have already like really, they play above their means there on both sides of the ball, and they're going to be better. Like, that's the other thing too, is like
Exactly.
I think the talent is going to keep improving, and I even look at just like the defense, and as good as obviously they are right now, 2/3 of the guys that play, like 20 plus snaps of the game right now. So there's like 18 guys who basically play 20 snaps a game as it currently stands. 12 of those guys are going to be back next year and have like multiple years left too. So they are in a really good spot. They've done a great job, and I just think that they've made believers out of people, and there's no reason that people shouldn't believe in the path forward with this program.
I tell you who the most important people to believe is themselves. That's what they've done more than anything. Is a lot of times Notre Dame would go into these games, and I just didn't feel like they believed themselves, and that's what Marcus Freeman has done. And the reason he's done that is, as you've pointed out, this is an O-line, D-line driven program. And I've been screaming this for 25 years. You cannot win at Notre Dame unless you have that. And the reason that they've convinced the players is because they've now become the physical. They've become the toughest guy, the toughest man out there. And when you are the toughest man out there in a tough man sport, you got a great chance to win. And that's why Notre Dame has I don't want to say a great chance, but they have a chance to win today. There's no doubt about it. And it's because they are the toughest man. I believe that. And I think they're going to show that today. Now, whether or not they can overcome all of the athletes and all the crazy stuff, whether they can not turn the ball over, whether they can win the turnover battle, whether they can do something cool in special teams that steals a possession, whatever it may be, we don't know. But I do know that when push comes to shove, when it comes to Notre Dame lining up and smacking people across the aisle, they're not going to back down from anybody. And I do think that they believe that they can win this game. And that's half the battle. So, I'm excited to see how this all unfolds. I think it's going to be really important to have a good start here. I think it's going to be very important to make sure you don't turn the ball over, especially in the first half. What you don't want to do is have to play from behind. If you have to play from behind, it's going to be difficult for Notre Dame. And I think we all know it. They're going to have to win on first down. We know that they're going to have to make some plays on first down. You're not going to be able to do that every time running the football either, Jamie. I hope Mike Denbrock decides he's going to have to throw some on first down. You're going to have to take some of those free access throws and scheme up some things that is going to take advantage of their over-aggression. We know that they're going to come out and try and stop Notre Dame's run. So we got to hope that Mike Denbrock has some stuff up his sleeve to do this. And I'm excited to see how it all unfolds. Now, it's tough as a Notre Dame fan, because if you turn it on the TV, if you're turning on the radio, all you're hearing is a bunch of negative stuff. And Notre Dame, yeah, they've had a great season, blah blah blah. They've worked hard, they've done all this, but they really don't have a chance in this game. And that's hard for Irish fans. I don't blame the national media one bit for choosing, for thinking that Notre Dame's going to lose to Ohio State. On paper, I think that makes sense. I really do. So I don't have a problem with it. But it is hard for Irish fans to listen to over and over and over. My question to you, Yama, is if you're Marcus Freeman, do you make the team aware of all of this? I'm sure they probably know, but do you make this an issue? What are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I think you kind of point to like, hey, they don't believe in us. I mean, you could use a million things for motivation going into this game, but I think you have to. That always galvanized people. It galvanized Ohio State. Like they were, basically everyone's like, well, they lost to Michigan again. Like, Ryan Day doesn't have it. They've used that as motivation for them to get there, which is, good for them. And obviously they've played great to get here in these last 3 games. But I also think it's funny because I think Ohio State has always just throughout, like, the whole time from like Urban to Day and this time, they play their best as front runners. Like when they're ahead and they're confident and they're thinking, hey, we're rolling, and they play that way and stuff. And I really would have loved to see if Texas would have scored there to make it 21-21, how Ohio State would have responded there. Because I think that would have been really interesting because they haven't had to do that. And that's something that that was a question with Notre Dame, right? Was that they had beaten everybody by double digits for, so many weeks in a row that they hadn't gone into a situation where they had to, hey, we need this now. And, they've been in deep waters and they came out and won, right? They were in deep water, from the second quarter on against Penn State and then came out on top, right? So that's something that Ohio State, since the Michigan game, hasn't gone through. So I think that to me is something that when I'm looking at this, and I do get from the perspective of like what makes this Ohio State team different than I would say the last team that Notre Dame played last year. And what makes them different is that team, those guys, the guys that like Jack Sawyer and JT Tuamalo and all of those guys were not playing at their height of their, powers. Yeah. They weren't the peak of their powers. And now those guys are. So that's why that I get it, why you would pick them to beat him, because you're like, yes, well, this is why Sawyer's been playing like this. So if he keeps playing like this, I'm sorry, right? Like, and this is, this guy's been playing like this. And you can look at that and you can point to so many guys in their team, and they do have, definitely in terms of draft eligible, they have more higher end talent than Notre Dame. But the thing is that these guys are playing there and they've got this belief and they're galvanized, right? And they're ready to go. But they haven't really, out of the teams they played, they haven't had anyone really like punch them back really yet. Texas was the closest, but I don't think like Texas, to me, when I watched them, although they got a bunch of studs on the team, I kind of thought they were soft.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think
both
Texas,
lines, I think. Both lines,
yes.
I think, are just not very good. Yes.
And
I think Notre Dame will wax Texas, actually. I really do.
Yeah, I just think too, when you look at like Texas and the talent that they have on the offensive line, but it's not their mentality to like, hey, we're just going to keep coming at you, right? Mm-hmm. Their thing is always, Sark is going to draw something up, he's going to draw something up and they're going to come up with a play, right? That was always their thing, but they never had to, when they got physically challenged by Georgia, by Ohio State, they weren't up for it. Like they couldn't handle it. So, some of their players, but not all of them. It's not a mentality. It's not baked within the program, right? And it's funny. I was listening to another podcast, it was a national podcast, which you guys think to do a pretty good job. And they were talking about how, well, if Notre Dame wants to make it like a street fight, that they're going to be surprised that I think Ohio State, is like ready for that. And I was like, really? Because I just haven't seen Ohio State win that way this year.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't. They tried to do that against Michigan, and it did not work.
Yeah.
Right. So
I would say the end of Penn State, they did. They ran the ball
yes.
pretty well at the end of Penn State, so I do give them credit for that. They did do a
Yeah.
good job in that game. But yeah, but otherwise, I agree with you 100%. They had every opportunity to take it to Texas and never did. They just never did. And I don't think Texas is that good. I just don't think their defensive line was as good as everybody made them out to be. And I thought their offensive line was soft. I just did. And here's to me, Jamie, I think going to be the key to the game. Denbrock is going to have to do some things on first down, right, to get some stuff going. But he's also going to have to stay patient with the run game. And because, obviously Ohio State's going to try and blow that up. But I don't think that Ohio State can continue, if Notre Dame stays patient with it, I don't think that they can continue to shut it down over and over and over. You just got to remain patient with that. The only way to do that, though, Jamie, is the defense has to do their job, right? The defense has got to keep the points down in order for Mike Denbrock to stay patient running the football. But I do think on first down, Notre Dame's going to have to make some plays to get them to back off a little bit. And then Denbrock's going to have to keep trying and keep working the ground game, because I think in order you want to limit Ohio State's possessions, in order to do that, you're going to have to be able to run the football. But in order to be patient with it, the defense is going to have to come up big in the first quarter and a half and keep the points down. That's kind of what I think is really the key to this game. If they can get through, the first quarter and a half without, the scoring onslaught, I think Notre Dame, that's where you want to be. That's where you're looking to be at this point. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that's right on, because I think if it's like close at halftime and they get to that point, then I just think it's game on, and then the pressure flips really hard onto Ohio State, and they have to kind of deal with that. So, and then we'd also know too that Notre Dame has just been, they've been one of the best third quarter teams every year. Obviously, they win middle eight. Everybody knows about how much they've dominated middle eight and all that kind of stuff. But they've just done such a great job in those things. When you get in the quote unquote later rounds, that's where they've been able to come up with stuff. And I've been thinking a lot about this game, and I think one of the reasons why so many people are not giving Notre Dame a chance, and partially, or they're giving Notre Dame a chance, but not much one. And I think that part of the reason is because of the injuries, obviously, because everyone will point to like, well, if they had Mills or if they had Patel or Morrison, whatever, like, yeah, okay, for sure. But I also think like one of the things is that Notre Dame, outside of Jeremiah Love and Leonard, obviously, because he's a playmaker too, they don't have guys that I would say, and Xavier Watts on defense, they don't have those guys that are like, these are the consistent playmakers, like every week, like, you're getting this out of this guy. And it's mostly because it's just been such a collective effort of like, well, against Georgia, Adon Schuler, he had just like just a monster game against Georgia. Yeah. And then, well, you go against Penn State and it's Jaden Greathouse. He's stepping forward here. And, you play early in the year and you're like, Notre Dame's not having much success. Boom, Jadarian Price breaks like a 60-yard touchdown or whatever it was, right? Like there's these other pieces that just have happened that when they've gotten these things that have helped them propel them there, where they've had this this complementary talent that does it, where it's like, oh, this is a Drake Bowen game, this is a Snead game, this is whatever. Like they've had that, and that's really kind of like a tribute to obviously the depth of Notre Dame's roster, but also just like to the talent that those guys have. Like Aeneas Williams last game too, and I think Aeneas Williams is going to be someone who's going to be an important guy in this game too. But there's all these guys right there that when you think about these games, you think about any big game, think about a national championship game, and you think about Hunter Renfrow, And Hunter Renfrow, no one was talking about Hunter Renfrow before that game. And so it's as much as you could say Jeremiah Love. I think Jeremiah Love, if he's, I think he's closer to obviously 100% this week than he was last week. I think he'll have a really great game, but it's probably going to come down to some of these other guys. Like you'll be like, wow, Emil Wagner, he really did a job on Sawyer and Uyeyama. Like it's going to be those kind of things, or Jagasaw or whatever, right? Like it's going to come down to those kind of things to determine whether or not like Notre Dame wins the game.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to have to be other people that are going to have to step up. You're going to need a Great House or a Faison or somebody else to, if you're going to win this game. It can't be all Jeremiah Love. There's got to be some other guys that make it. And I think you mentioned Aeneas Williams, and I think Aeneas has got to have a big game. But where Aeneas has to have a big game is in blitz pickup, because they're going to come after Riley Leonard. He's got to do a better job than he did against Penn State in picking up the blitz. Now, again, you got some pretty darn big players and good players that you have to go against. But I'm excited to see, and Jamie, you rightfully said, there every week it's somebody different that seems to step up. So we have to hope that somebody will do it again in this game. And it just seems like somebody just, their name gets called. You mentioned even earlier in the year, if Bo Collins didn't make some of the plays that he made early,
100%,
we wouldn't be in this position. And maybe Bo Collins suddenly decides, hey, I got to have a big game, and he's the guy that has it, and we'll see. Now, here's something that, I mean, this is kind of weird, I guess, but I thought about this because, of course, I didn't sleep. I just, when I get these big games, I just don't sleep. So I'm sitting there thinking, and I mean, I think every Notre Dame fan would love nothing better than to be the guy to give the pregame speech in this game, right? And then you get to think that you're Marcus Freeman and you're in year 3, right? I mean, you're like, man, could you imagine when he took over this head coaching job, Jamie? You're over there and you think, I mean, you have confidence in yourself, but you really don't know. You know what I mean? You really don't know because you don't know what you don't know. And to come from what he has come from and to be to this point to where you get to give the pregame speech to your team, who's an underdog, by the way, to play in the biggest game of their lives. And this is what you, as a coach, this is the moment that you wait for your whole entire life. And here it is in year 3. And can you imagine what it's like to be Marcus Freeman at this point? And really all the Notre Dame coaches, it has got to be such an amazing moment that you get to have this opportunity to do this. And let's be honest, Freeman's speech and what he says is going to probably have an impact because he's got to get this team believing that they're better than what everybody else thinks they are. And that's a hard job to do. But can you imagine? I think every Irish fan would love to have the opportunity to give this speech, and here Marcus Freeman gets to have it. And it's just going to be an awesome thing. I can't wait to see what's said. We'll probably won't see it until after the fact, and we may not see it at all if they lose. But it's something I thought about waking up, and I think every head coach would just be thrilled to have this opportunity. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's funny because that Daniel Haskell brought up about Manti's pen. I think he brought it out already for one of the other
Penn State.
CFP
I think
games.
It was. Yeah.
And I mean, there's so many. It's got to be a trip too because like his very first game, as the official head coach, where his staff, his program fully was against Ohio State. I'm not counting that bowl game because it's different. It's different. But like, that first game there, and it's just like, he is so much more in command of the team and of the program now than he was then. I don't know. He just has known what the right buttons to push in all of these kind of things. I think he's going to come out like super fired up, very similar to Texas A&M, like, where his guys are going to come out and they're going to be I just felt like against Texas and A&M and against Georgia, there was a different physicality from the jump to those games, and he knew that it was needed. And I think obviously it's going to be needed in this game too. And frankly, your Pat Coogan's speech is going to be something
Yeah, yeah.
to remember as well. So, man, it just
I
gets
would
me
do it
excited.
almost. I would do it almost like the Hoosiers situation. You remember the movie The Hoosiers?
Yeah, oh yeah,
And I'm not saying that they're that big of an underdog, but I would just be sitting there saying, look, this is a team game, and we've taught you all about team and playing for the glory of the team and things like this. But when it comes down to this game, Yama, this is the man across from you. And the whole world is telling you, they're telling you that that man that's across from you is better than you. Did he train harder than you? Does he want this more than you? That's the angle I would take. And then I would get them fired up. But I think you want to almost get it calm and get it in their mind that, hey, nobody believes that you're going to win this. They don't believe it because you're too injured and you're not good enough. And they got all these draft choices and they got all this and they got all that. And they don't believe in you, but I believe in you. I think that's the approach to take. And so it'll be exciting to see what happens. And I think that's kind of what Holtz did. I don't think, during the 88 thing, I don't remember seeing this speech. I remember hearing a lot about it, but I don't think he came out with just exploded and crazy. I think that came at the very end, and then you use your teammates or the team to get them fired up. The Pat Cougans then want to run through a wall and get everybody going. But I think it'll be an interesting thing to see what happens. Now, I also think, as you've talked about, and I know that we've talked about as well. The real key to this game is what Jagasaw does against JT. Can Wagner hold up against Sawyer? Can they chip? What can they do? I do think that that's going to be a big part of this when Notre Dame has to pass. And I think interior, they got some good dudes there too. They really do. What do you think about this matchup? What concerns you, and what gives you confidence that they'll be able to hold up in this?
I think it's the best defensive line Notre Dame has played all year. I think it's because of their strength kind of across the board, right? Like, I think you could say that, the ends obviously are the guys who make the headlines because they, are the guys who get the sacks. They have more havoc plays. But Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton are like legit, like probably like top 100 picks in the NFL draft. Like, those are guys that under previous circumstances, they would have already been in the league. They would have left already because they were probably going to be those high picks last year. But, they paid money so those guys would stay in school. So it's like obviously a veteran group. They have even if you just look at like the depth that they have behind, like those guys are good. Like they're good players. Like they're guys who can win on their own. So I think but their starting four is the best starting four that Notre Dame has faced. So that makes it obviously that's much more difficult where you can't say like, hey, well, we're going to single block this guy and then we're going to no, you got to be like, there isn't an Abdul Carter because I know Dennis Sutton had a huge game against Notre Dame, but still part of that was because, he was going against Tosh Baker and winning those things, right? Like he wasn't doing that against Knapp when Knapp was in the game, right? Like all this basically his big plays came when Baker was in the game. So I think that's what you have to see is like, well, how will Jagasaw deal with that? And really it's going to kind of come down to is like, you can't let those guys pin their ears back and get into those. It's 3rd and 9 and those guys just get to they're going to rush 4. They're going to drop 7. Obviously they'll blitz sometimes too. And Knowles does a fantastic job with that, but it's going to be about protecting the good news is that Riley Leonard has had to deal with this for the last 3 weeks because basically every defensive line they've played has just got after it and been really, really good pass rush wise. So this is no different. what the key is going to be able to, like, can you run the ball on these guys? Can you run the ball on them to make Ohio State say, hey, we have to dedicate more bodies to stop the run? Because if they can stop it with less bodies because their D line is just winning enough, then it's going to be awful tough for Notre Dame to score any points, really. So it's going to be about whether or not, Notre Dame can, like, win enough up front and do enough to, like, put wrinkles in the run game just to change things up. Because I mean, based on where we've seen and also too how good Ohio State is, I think it's going to be a struggle to run early for Love and Price, and it's going to be about, like, mixing in the Leonard runs. It's going to be about, like, hey, it's 3rd and 2, you're running some kind of quarterback power and then you're converting, right? Like, it's going to be all about that kind of stuff, right? And you can't get like that's where you need to win. It's like 3rd and 2, like Rocco has to, like, hold his own against Tyreek Williams. Like, that is the kind of thing where, even if you looked at last year, that was where, like, Tyreek Williams won too many of those, and that was a problem for Notre Dame.
Yeah. I think also how you run Riley Leonard too. I think you're going to have to change it up a little bit. You can't run him the same way every single time. And,
Yeah.
They tend to run Riley a lot the same way. And I do think you're going to have to do some different things to keep them a little bit off balance and go from there. Now, when you look at their defense, where do you think they can get got? Where do you think, if Notre Dame has some success, where do you think it's going to be?
I mean, I think it's really, like, their corners. I don't think their corners are that good. And Denzel Burke obviously was hurt last game. I don't know what the status of his health is. He said it was like upper limb injury, whatever that means. Who knows? Like, but he missed the second half of the game. And frankly, he hasn't been that good this year. Like, that has been an issue for them. I think their safeties have been so good that they've kind of masked the problems with the corners. And, like, Igbinison is a good player. Davis Igbinison, the other corner, is a good player, as a physical matchup corner, but it's just gone to the point where obviously he is a guy who holds and grabs and is too physical on every play. And just the refs, it just got to a point where there was probably so many people in the Big Ten who probably just sent in tape of, like, hey, we got to get more calls against this guy. He has more flags against him than any corner in all of college football. So he's had 14 flags accepted, 3 others that were declined, probably because they converted or something on those other plays. So 17 flags against him. Like, that's a guy who they have to test multiple times. And sometimes he's going to win, and sometimes he's not going to get the call.
Even if you don't win, you're probably going to get a call. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to get a call at some point. You're going to get a call at some point. So that is something that I think, when there's a lot of times too, when I get it when it's like it's 3rd and 8 and their pass rush, you're just worried about getting it off and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you might just want to throw up a jump ball towards the guy who he's guarding and just say, hey, let's see what happens, because you are going to get those flags at some point. He is going to, believe me, that guy will grab all the time. It'll be about how much they call it. As Jacob Paulus mentioned, the SEC crew this crew has a reputation for throwing off flags. So there's probably going to be flags against Notre Dame's corners and stuff too. That's probably going to happen. But he is, people think that, Christian Gray, like, oh man, all these flags. You know how many flags have been thrown against Christian Gray all year? 6. This guy's 17. It's like it's a big difference. It's a big difference. So I think that's something that, Notre Dame's receivers, I mean, obviously Notre Dame doesn't have the same level of receivers as them, but you have to go out their corners. You have to. And then the other thing is that Texas in the previous game, 14-17, throwing to tight ends and running backs, right? That was the thing where they knew that they had to do a lot of stuff, short passing game to those guys, move the sticks. Obviously, you had a couple big wheel routes for touchdowns.
Yeah.
You got to do that in this game. So that's why I say Aeneas Williams, That has to be something there, right? Where he's doing that. Sonny Styles, freak athlete. He is just not a great linebacker
Recognition
yet.
guy.
Yes, he's not a great recognition guy. So
Yeah.
he can get got. And he's also too, when I'm talking about the inside run, that D line better do a good job, because he's a guy who, if he's attacking and he can run stuff down, great. But if you run at him, it's different. So I think you got to pick your spots. Obviously, there's different guys you got to go against there. You have to mix stuff up. Denbrock has to obviously have the kind of game that he just had against Penn State, where he's like on one in terms of what he's, just having a pulse of what he's going to get from Knowles. And that's tough because Knowles is super unpredictable, definitely more unpredictable than Allen. But you just have to be able to pick your spots. And then when you get your chances, kind of like what Denbrock did with Eli Raridan against USC, against Kobe King in Penn State, you got to take it and you got to attack.
Yeah. All right, we got a bit of business to do here. Wanted to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing. ESQ has been making the best handmade custom suits, sport coats, tuxedos, and shirts for the last decade. They've been featured on GQ, ESPN, USA Today. You've seen them dressing your favorite players and coaches. ESQ only gets the best fabric from Italy and England's top mills. With over 40,000 fabrics to choose from, you're guaranteed to look your best. Go visit esqclothing.com, book your appointment, mention ISD, get 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. Thanks again for Ge for always being a sponsor with us. We greatly appreciate it. Yama, let's flip the page. And the matchup that I think everybody is concerned about is Notre Dame's defense. How are they going to hold up? How are you going to stop all these skilled players? How are you going to slow down this offense that, frankly, has been kind of clicking lately? They've done a pretty good job lately. And Chip Kelly has done a pretty good job of calling plays, which he was not doing, I really felt, most of the year. Things have just been working for this group. What do you think, is the best way to kind of stop these guys? What can Notre Dame do?
I mean, I think it is really to mix it up as much as possible. I know, what they're saying in terms of, hey, we're going to play man, that's who we are, all of that. Yes, they are going to play some man, but I guarantee you this isn't going to be the highest frequency of man that they play all year. It just won't be, right? So they're like a 57% man team, which also people think it's like, wow, that's like, like they play man all the time. Like they're playing like 90% man. It's like 57%. Yeah. So they're mixing it in. So what I would say is they're probably going to do obviously they're going to mix coverages and do different things, but it's probably going to be closer to like 40 or something down there. And they just have to be able to, win when they get those chances. And it's really going to all be about matchups as well, right? When we're thinking about no one's really talking about, everyone's talking about Jeremiah Smith, and fair enough. The guy is friggin' amazing. Like he's as good as a freshman receiver as there's been in college football in, I don't know, like 30 years, basically. Like he's just a generational talent. He absolutely is. He also had 1 catch for 3 yards last game. So he's human, and there are going to find different ways to get him the ball. It's about him not, scoring on a 70-yard touchdown or something. It's about Travion Henderson not doing what he did against Texas with the 75-yard screenplay or the 61-yard touchdown he had against Notre Dame last year. Because Henderson is a really good player, but that's what makes him different, like a Price or a Love too, is that he's a home run hitter, right? So, I mean, first off, it obviously starts with, stopping the run and doing that, but there are going to be times where I think they're going to run the ball on Notre Dame, and it's because Notre Dame is going to kind of give that to them a little bit and say like, hey, we're not dedicating as many bodies here. We'll give you, if you get it and hey, you got a good play call, you execute, you got 7 yards here. People have to be okay with that during the game. and it's going to be about like winning once they get over the 50, really.
That's
And
what it
like,
is. Yeah.
yeah. So
It's going to be a
because you,
frustrating game defensively because we're so used to Notre Dame going 3 and out. You know what I mean? We're just
yes,
used to seeing they can't play it that way. I don't think. I think that they're just going
no,
to have to. It's we're dealing with 3 versus 7. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That's what you're hoping for here. We want them kicking threes and not scoring 7. And you know, you want to try and limit what they can do. And so I agree with you. It's going to be kind of frustrating on defense. They're going to get some stuff, and you're just going to have to allow that. And Jamie's going to get 1,000 texts from me bitching and complaining about it, even though I know it's going to happen, but it's still
yeah,
going to be frustrating to watch. So it just is
yeah.
what it is. Go ahead.
But you know what D Brasco 22 says here too is like Jordan Clark is going to be a super huge important part of this game because that matchup with him and Egbuka, when they are in man, he is going to be matched up with there. That was a matchup last year that, I mean, obviously Thomas Harper played really well for Notre Dame all year. That was the matchup that he struggled with the most. I mean, fair enough. The guy's a pretty good player, but that is something where obviously you're going to get Egbuka's going to make some plays. He just can't have, if you are putting extra towards Jeremiah Smith to make sure he doesn't go off, that means Clark has to be unbelievable when it comes to Egbuka. And another thing is too is that they are a team that Ohio State and Will Howard have been awesome against the blitz this year. Obviously, Notre Dame, one of the best blitz teams out there, one of the best man coverage teams. So there's a lot of like strength versus strength here. But so it's going to be about mixing it up enough to make them think, oh, hey, we're like, you're disguising here. They think you're coming, but you're not coming. Or they don't think you're coming, but you're coming here. Like there's going to be a lot of cat and mouse there that I think that is going to matter a lot because Will Howard is someone who's very decisive and when he's decisive, he's accurate and he can just get the ball, but he also will throw it blindly, decisively. And
Yeah.
that has been where a lot of his picks have come from. That's where, like, the pick 6 against Penn State came from. Like, that was one of those ones you're like, why is he throwing this? It's because that was a predetermined read that he just said, okay, I'm getting this. So that's why he threw it. He thought he was getting man there. He thought he was getting some kind of pressure. And that's why he threw it. And it was like, he looks like he's throwing it to no one. He's throwing thinking that person's going to be there because of this, whatever. And then that's what can happen. And he's done that enough this year because he's done enough, specifically on third down. He's thrown 5 picks on third down. He's a 70th rated passer on third down. They're not a good third down team. That's the other thing. Out of all the things that they're, as you could say, hey, they're explosive. They got these athletes, whatever. They're not a good third down team because Howard isn't the best guy as a straight drop back guy. If he can play action, he can do all of these things. Yes, you give him free access, he's going to take it, all that stuff. But if you get him into a situation where he's got to sit back and read, that is not his strength. That is not his strength. And it's why he's not like considered a top prospect, right? Like he's a good college quarterback, a very good like game manager, a big kid with a strong arm and a good athlete, but he's not like, he doesn't have like a brilliant mind where he's going to like break down and make all these terrific reads. He gets off his reads quickly. No, that's not him. So get him into those situations, and that's where Notre Dame can win. So it's going to be about getting there when it's like, hey, they're on the plus 40, like and it's 3rd and 7. Notre Dame's got to win there. They got to win there, and this can be huge.
They got to be disciplined too in their rushing because this kid can run, and when he gets a full head of steam, he's I wouldn't say he's Josh Allen, but he can run. He's not he's not somebody that is just going to stand back there and you can just tee off on. So Notre Dame's going to have to be disciplined, and when they're rushing, they're going to have to keep looking and making sure that, hey, he doesn't take off because he can pick up a lot of yards in a hurry. And that's part of his game that I don't think he gets enough credit for. He can make some things happen in that regard. So I want to get the monger on here, Greg. Let's get your thoughts, man. I want to get your thoughts here.
Game 16. You know, I mean, I think before every year, it's like you always say, you know, like Marcus Freeman likes to say, 12 guaranteed. You know, you get 12 guaranteed games, and anytime you talk, it's or we talk in the preseason or whatever it might be during camp, it's just like you know, you get 12 games, 13, hopefully 16, right? And you say hopefully 16, not really thinking that's going to happen, but it's just like it has happened. 16 games of Notre Dame football. They've, you know, I was out with my daughter's soccer team in Vegas, and everyone's talking to me about the game and everything, and I'm, you know, trying to explain to them like what this season is, right? Like it's not just Notre Dame playing the national title game. They haven't won a major bowl game since I was 12. They won 2 this year, right? They won the sugar, they won the orange. Like they won the playoff game at home. And I think that, you know, there's so much about this year and this team that I think it obviously gets missed nationally because they don't cover Notre Dame the way that we do, right? Like we know everything about this team. We know everything that they've been through and what they've overcome. And it's kind of just, it's interesting to me the way that, like, you know, I'll make a post about Xavier Watts hasn't given up a touchdown in 3, you know, in 2 years, right? 1,100 coverage snaps, given up 1 touchdown, right? Like according to PFF, like it's just incredible. And you know, I have 4 different fan bases telling me it's about their schedule and it's because of this, that, and the other thing. And I think that people don't really get like how good this Notre Dame team is and how well they've had to play to get to this point. And I'm just feeling like it's, you know, I was reminded of this in the playoff game last night with the Ravens and the Bills. There's no way the Bills should win that game. There's no way the Ravens should lose that game. The Ravens found a loss and the Bills found a win. And I just think Notre Dame, the way that they found a victory against Georgia, where it's like you get 90 passing yards from your quarterback. They ran the ball okay, but they didn't really get one long scoring drive. They won the game by 2 touchdowns. Against Penn State, how did they find their offense in the second half of that game? You got linemen hurt. You've got your top wide receiver hurt. Like you have people injured. 27-13, they outscore Penn State. They double them up in total yards. They just dominated the game after they went down 10 right before half. Their backup quarterback, they found a victory. They found how to win the game, and it was with their offense. And you know, I put it in my prediction. Like we look at these things and we analyze these things, and this guy and that guy and that guy and this guy. There's a way to win, and I think Notre Dame is just going to find that way. I just think they're going to find it, however it is. And I think Ohio State, if they have shown anything, they can find losses. Ohio State can find losses. They've had the top team in F plus in FEI a number of years prior to this one, and they have found the loss. I think Notre Dame will force them to find a loss in this game. I just believe it's going to happen. As much as, you know, look, we've talked a ton about how talented Ohio State is. I think the 9.5 point spread is fair. It is, especially given how injured Notre Dame is. But
I agree. But that doesn't mean anything in the game. You know what I mean?
Right.
It all comes down to, you know, can Riley Leonard protect the football and not make the mistakes that he made in Penn State? Can the Irish defense force some turnovers there? Can they find something in special teams? And can they play discipline? And a guy that, you know, if there's one guy that I think really they need to have a huge game, it's Howard Cross. I really think, and that's hard to say because his ankle is what it is, but you know, Notre Dame will have an okay pass rush and that type of thing. But when you can get pressure upfield, you know, from your interior players, it just disrupts everything for a quarterback. And that's what Howard has been so good at doing all these years and hasn't been able to do it much we got 11 days rest. Maybe that's enough to give him the little extra in the tank that they need. But I think for Notre Dame to win, Howard Cross is going to have some success getting in the backfield and disrupting things. And if he can do that, and the things that I mentioned as far as turnovers and playing discipline and special teams and that type of thing, they have a chance. They have a legit chance. And I agree. I think that the national media is saying what they're saying because it makes sense. But how many times in these games has what made sense not turned out to be the actual situation? And it's because you got to play the game. And at the end of the day, it's the team that's going to make the least mistakes and the team that makes the most plays. And you just got to hope that Notre Dame is on that side again. They've done it all year long. They've done it against in situations where things weren't looking good, and they still came up and made plays. So we just got to hope that that's what we see here. Yama, your thoughts here?
Man, that Howard Cross point, I think is 100% on the money, Mike, because obviously we know he has not been healthy. And I really, I don't know, like, yeah, of course, right? Like I'm driving my wife to work this morning. I'm asking her about like, how much do you think this ankle will be like when I put more like that, right? Like she would know, and this thing, she's not whatever, right? But it's just funny though, like, but that kind of thing could be one of the hugest factors in the game, to be honest. Like it really could be, because if you look at, last year, and what I know that Mills has played well this year, and he was great, and they do miss him, obviously.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
But the game last year, Howard Cross dominated that game. Howard Cross dominated that game. Without Howard Cross last year, because frankly, too, like a lot of the other things within the defense, weren't as good, but it was helped because Howard Cross was like so dominant up front. And they haven't obviously got that level of play from Cross all year because he's been hurt for like 3/4 of the year. And they missed games as well, too. But like, if they can get him, if he is healthy enough, just 80%, and he can like get through it where he's not like, we see him, running off with his bad ankle all the time, like he was the last couple of games. If we see that he can do that, he can absolutely wreck them up front, because Hinsman sucks. He is not a good player. He sucks. I don't care. He doesn't play for Notre Dame. I don't mind calling out another guy on another team. He's not good. He's not a good player. They had the guy who was playing center before, won the Remington Award. That is a big loss. Like, where they moved Donovan Jackson out to left tackle, and at the first few games he struggled, but he's settled in now and he's played well there. And that's less of a thing drop off. Josh Simmons was playing really well, but it's less of a drop off there. The drop off from McLaughlin to Hinsman is massive. It's the reason they brought McLaughlin in, because Hinsman, they didn't want him to come back and start again. They were like, this guy's not good enough. We need a better center. So that is something that I think that if Cross can go and he could just whip that guy, especially if he's doing stuff early, because that's just one of those things where, like, I've been in it too. When you have a guy, especially as a defensive lineman, and you have confidence in that guy, and that guy is like, I can't block this guy, you're in his head the whole game. And it's over for that guy. There is no coming back from it when it's like that, which is why you see that too. We've seen it with Notre Dame players before. When a guy gets on tilt early, and it's like they can't recover, because it's like this guy's just been whooping them the whole game. So that is something, whether obviously Cross, but like even Heinisch too. Like, that is something where if you can get someone to just truly dominate that guy in that matchup, that can blow up a lot of things for them and really help with like what they're doing against the run and devoting less bodies in there. Obviously what they do with some of their blitz stuff, like inside too, is going to be big, but I really think, like, you know, if we go back and look at the game after and we say like Notre Dame lost, and you look at like Howard Cross limping around, you're going to say, and that was a pretty big factor.
Well, think about how many, players the Yama put in comatose state after they had to go against him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many. The
I
dudes,
mean, I can
they're
almost
in
count them
homes
on
all
one.
over the world right now. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
All right. When Notre Dame wins this game, and I'm saying when because that's the attitude we got to have going into this thing. When Notre Dame wins this game, how great is it going to feel to shut these people up? And then also, how important is this going to be for the program when they win? Let's start with you, Greg.
I mean, how important is it for the program? I mean, it's like, it's everything, right? Like I've followed this team. Like my first memory of Notre Dame football is the 91 Orange Bowl and the clip from Rocket, right? And I was a fan before that, obviously, because I was crying in my sister's room. So obviously I wanted Notre Dame to win that game. I just to get to this point. I mean, it would be like, I think I've seen it other places. Like it'd be the best title Notre Dame's ever won. To win 4 elimination games, games,
how they had to do it too. Absolutely.
And how it happened. And like, they've never had to, and not just 4 elimination games, but like ever since September 7th, every game since then has been an elimination game, and they haven't blinked. And, like, I just think of like, I think of young Greg every time I'm doing this. I think of the younger version of myself. And now that I'm actually like, I cover this team for real. Like it's kind of crazy that I'm in this position, and I've been afforded this position by you guys. And I just, it would be a youthful thing. Like me doing this is I am still a kid. I'm still the young version of me. And, to have shared it with you guys and to shared it with everyone who watches our stuff and takes in our content, and to have covered this team. I mean, it would just be like, it would be absolutely massive when they win this game, or, when I will be emotional. Like I will truly be emotional. And I'll tell you right now,
oh yeah,
the post-game show will be
crazy.
It'll run long. Like I told my wife already, like if they win, you're not going to see me. Like, I'm just going to be in here. Jamie has to write and stuff. I'll stay on here as long as someone is in the chat. I will talk to you. I will talk to you for as long ever. Like it would be, I can't even put into words what it would mean for Notre Dame to win. It just, all those games, I watched every 07 game, the 01 team, the terrible 03, 04 teams. Like I watched all those games, every single game. I remember all of it. And for them to be here,
should have been there covering it. It was horrible. Let me tell you, it was horrible.
It was just like, but just
there's nothing worse than covering an awful team. There's nothing worse. Everybody is miserable.
To be here now is just, it's such a special team. It's a great team, no matter what happens. No one's ever had to make a run like this. And that goes for Ohio State too, right? Like it's not taking anything away from them. No one's ever had to make a run like this to win a championship. It'll be one of the most earned championships. Win. Right. I mean, you go Big Ten.
They deserve it. There's no doubt.
Big Ten, SEC, Big Ten. Like Notre Dame didn't get the Big 12 in this. They didn't get the Mountain West. They didn't get that, right? They didn't get SMU. They got big boys.
Yeah. Yama?
Well, I mean, I'll say, what it would mean for me, like personally, like if they do win post game or whatever. Obviously, like I've been basically, I got tricked into being a fan in 1993, thinking this is where it was going to be, and it was all it literally was all downhill after that.
It certainly has been mostly, yes.
I mean, they've had some ups and downs, but there was a lot more downs for a good number of those years. But
Yep.
I really just think too, it's just one of those things where there are going to be people who covered the team for years, who have this is my 10th year working for you, Mike. Obviously, this is the best team that they've had since I've covered the team for you. But it's different to where Notre Dame, there's always a point in the time where Notre Dame no matter what the season, Notre Dame gets a certain amount of respect, and then they get to a point where they lose a game or something happens, and then people just start trashing them and saying, well, they don't have this or they don't have that. And, I can tell you too, is just like, and you guys can do the same, that in kind of like following the program, especially over the last 3 years, and kind of seeing, I would be lying if I said this is what I thought that Notre Dame was going to be building towards this. They were going to be in the national championship game in year 3, especially with the injuries and all that. Because I thought, at some point the dam is going to break and whatever. But they just kept defying it because of the depth and obviously the contribution of the freshmen and the development and just how good the coaching staff is. And I think it's just more of would just provide validation to the program, to Marcus Freeman, to all the coaching staff, to all the players. Hey, the only time I ever get bothered when people are looking at this game is when they aren't talking about, I read something today from Pete Thamel, where some opposing coach said Notre Dame's linebackers are just average. They play hard. They're just average. I was just like, I mean, buddy, please release your name so I know what your linebackers are on your team, because I can tell you these linebackers are not average. If this is what average linebackers are, I mean, I've seen average linebackers play for Notre Dame. I've seen average linebackers in the last 10 years covering the team. These aren't average linebackers. And I'm not saying that they're the best linebackers in the country right now, because obviously some of these guys are still getting better, but they're far above average. And I think there hasn't been enough credit given to how talented so many of these guys in the team are. And even to the point too, when people are like, man, Marcus Freeman has done this great job and all this, and he has, but it's like, well, no, Notre Dame has dudes. They have dudes. And finally, I think that would make some of these people acknowledge, hey, these guys are really friggin' good. This was really the first week that I can recall anyone going into the game talking about how, oh yeah, Leonard Moore is really good. Outside of the program, people who cover the team. It's the first week that I saw that. Yeah. And
all you got to do is watch the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. But it just shows that a lot of people don't watch or really aren't paying attention. They're not really putting on film or anything like that. It's just very surface area, things that they're doing. And I'm just telling you, there's a lot of guys who's these underclassmen that I think that they're going to be high picks eventually, right? When they end up leaving. And there's just a lot of guys on the team that I think that when they look back on this game, if Notre Dame wins the game, they'll look back on the game and they'll say, man, they had a lot of guys on that team and whatever. Yeah. And but they're not saying it now, but I think that will be a huge takeaway from the thing, is that, yes, they did a great job coaching and they did all this, but they're like, I didn't realize how many guys they had on the team, but it's this guy and this guy, because a lot of these guys, as we watch these NFL games, and it's great to see, you see Fisher and Patterson are starting for the Texans, and you see Tranquil starting for the Chiefs, and you see more of those Notre Dame guys in the NFL who are actually playing bigger and bigger roles. Kyle Hamilton, obviously, with the Ravens and all this, but Kyron Williams, you're just going to see more and more of these guys, and you're like, oh, there's just going to be more and more of these guys are legit NFL dudes,
Pro
and
dudes,
they're going to get acknowledged for that. And I think that will be a big takeaway if from that is like the job that Notre Dame has done evaluating, developing these guys and where they're at and how much talent they have.
Really, it's the best case scenario for Notre Dame if they win this game. Nobody expects them to win. Nobody, other than some Notre Dame fans. So I'm telling you, if Notre Dame wins this game, it's going to be huge. It's going to be a huge commercial for Notre Dame about a lot of things. And most important, it's going to absolutely validate Marcus Freeman's message that he's been preaching for 3 years. Choose hard, man. You can do both, and you can be successful doing both. And yeah, it's not the most exciting place to be here, but it sure is a lot of fun when you win a national championship. And I think ultimately what you're hoping for is a 2005 Notre Dame USC game, right? That even if Notre Dame doesn't win the game, it still comes down to a game like that. That would be obviously the best case scenario. Plus you win the game would be really exciting. But I think it can be that type of game. I really do. I think Notre Dame can hold this team to the fourth quarter and then let you see where the chips may fall. I mean, that's what happened last year. That can still happen again. And yes, Notre Dame is down, and yes, Notre Dame is injured, and they're not the same team. But the team that was last year is also not the same team that is this year's Notre Dame team. Last year's team didn't believe like this team did. Last year's team, I don't think had the same coaching that this team did. And so I think that there's a lot to get excited about. If they can somehow win this game, it's going to be absolutely huge for Notre Dame's program. And I just can't wait to see what happens. So hopefully we're back here in a few hours and we're celebrating and going crazy. That's all we can. But even if it doesn't turn out that way, folks, I just hope everybody celebrates this, because it's interesting. I was talking to Christian McCollum, who is obviously one of our guys, and he's taking his son Shea down there. And I thought he had the best thought when he was taking Shea down there. And he told Shea, look, if Notre Dame somehow loses this game or gets blown out, I don't want any of this negative crap, because you're getting to experience something that almost every other fandom doesn't get a chance to do. And you get a chance to come down here and experience this game for what it is and celebrate that you even got here. And so if it doesn't turn out the way you want, that's okay, because every other game did. And you got to be excited about that. And the most important thing is you have the coach now and you have the program now to where you can get back here again. And I don't think we've felt that way going into this many, many times in the past. I think everybody feels that way now. And so we'll see what happens. Hopefully we're back here in some hours and we're just getting excited and celebrating. I just can't wait to see what happens, guys. And looking forward to it. And I just want to say thanks for everybody. Also want to remind you of the special. Go to the front page, click on the front page, and you'll see our special being advertised there. If you're not an Irish Sports Daily member, it ends tonight. So make sure you get over there and sign up today. And we'll also be back after the game. So thanks for everybody for listening and watching. And we'll talk to you here after the game on YouTube. Look for Irish Sports Daily. Look for our post-game show. We'll be having a good time either way. Thanks for watching and listening.